Welcome to Being Humans. We're better together. I'm Ian Christopher Wendt. Our topic today is the development of human consciousness, both evolutionary and historical. None of what I'll share with you here is unique to my ideas or particularly controversial from a scientific standpoint. Indeed, most of these ideas are mainstream science, but few emphasize the importance of relational and communal knowledge and bonds as central to the development of human consciousness. Most tend to emphasize technology, from fire to tools, with the obligatory reference to humans as social animals. Here's a brief overview to chart our path forward. Human consciousness developed over thousands of generations as women and men chose one another, as families made long-term marriage bonds and built communities. Our awareness and consciousness is built on the foundation of relational and community bonds and shared knowledge. Our consciousness was born of fire, the first human tool. Around hearth fires and communal campfires, our ancestors shared meals and stories, and the fires transformed our bodies and minds. Our consciousness was born of language creation, from gestures and signs to words and songs and stories, told and retold generation after generation. Feminine and masculine communication patterns all combined through intimate knowledge and family caregiving and the training of youth to produce extraordinarily complex and diverse languages around the world. Our consciousness was born of technology, of wood and bone, of stone tools, of pots and bowls, and thread, tying our clothing, our shelters, and our tools together. Our consciousness arose through domestication, first self-domestication of human beings, or the taming of wild men into friendly, communicative, cooperative, competitive families, clans, communities, and societies. Then the domestication of dogs, and eventually the domestication of fruits and grasses into wheat, rice, corn, and apples. Finally, the domestication of cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, and horses. And all of this combined in ever-increasing complexity of relationships, communities, and societies, until we had states and cities and religions. Our consciousness arose from our greatest stories and ideals, particularly our ancient wisdom traditions. We will turn our attention to two ancient creation myths, the first from Genesis and the second from the Hindu Sankhya philosophy. We will explore how the creation of nature and human beings, the importance of male and female relational bonds, the rise of awareness and agency, and different pathways or ideals that shaped our sense of human nature and the purposes of life can be understood from these different traditions. I want to begin our story of the development of human consciousness with the foundational importance of reproduction and relational bonding. Humans mate face-to-face throughout adulthood into old age. That may seem very obvious to you, but it's actually crucial or fundamental to human consciousness. Among other animals, only bonobos also commonly do this. Humans developed and maintained long-term relationships and intergender cooperation. Mating face-to-face throughout life into old age is so important to this process. Humans form connections. They get to know each other. They look at each other. They face one another. They copy one another. This begins with our most intimate relationships and shapes all of our relationships. To begin with, among humans, females select mates. Males tend to compete for mates. There's evolutionary evidence that as few as half of all males succeeded in mating and reproducing historically. Next, modern human brains and skulls have grown to the physical limits of gestation and birthing size. And so this caused humans to be born relatively early and gestate for a shorter time than most other animals. This means that humans are born helpless, and we train human infants in every survival and social skill. Another very important related aspect of human relationships in the development of societies and consciousness is the key contribution of grandmothers. Males can continue to mate and reproduce throughout their lives into old age, but female fertility lasts from adolescence to menopause. After a woman passes menopause, she can no longer reproduce. So evolutionary biologists ask, why then would we have grandmothers if they can no longer bear children? Postmenopausal women are elders, they are teachers, they are caregivers. They assist and lead mothers and other young women and the community generally in all kinds of activities. Their experience and wisdom has been crucial to all kinds of family, kin, and community activities. The bonds and relationships between mates, females and males, families, extended families, and kinship are the foundation for increasingly complex human relationships and communities, such as clans, tribes, cultures, and society. Closely related to these relationships is a topic we brought up in our previous video, namely mirror neurons. Human beings' brains have mirrors in them. When we see someone else perform an activity, we experience the activity as if we ourselves were doing it. Mirror neurons fire both when you do something, when you act, and also when you see something done, when you observe it. This is crucial to human learning, education, empathy, and relationship and community building. In addition to relationships, we need to talk about a whole variety of techniques, technologies, and adaptations that humans developed over the course of many thousands of generations. As our ancestors around the world manipulated nature and their environments, they altered and built the fabric of human minds, communities, and societies. The first is fire. Fire forms a central part of cultures and myths from around the world. Prometheus, the Greek titan, rebelled against Zeus and gave humans fire. The Greeks associated that gift with the origin of human technology and civilization. In the Bible, fire forms a crucial part of all sacrifices and burnt offerings. When Moses and other prophets communed with God, they often did so with a pillar of fire, a burning bush, etc. Fire and the sun are the center of Zoroastrian religion. In the oldest forms of Vedic Hinduism, Agni, the divine fire, encompasses the moment of sacrifice. In these and many other traditions, fire is often the divine priest, or the connection between human priests and the divine. Fire is a gateway. The fire transports the sacrificial offering from the physical world to the spiritual world. In addition, there are a wide variety of mundane things that fire did to transform human societies and even human bodies. Fire brings healthier, easier to digest food, as well as a wider range of dietary options. There are many things that you can eat when they're cooked that you cannot eat raw. Fire made food much easier to digest. Fire also kills bacteria and other things that could make us sick. Most other primates spend the majority of their day eating, chewing, and digesting leafy greens. They have massive abdomens and large digestive tracts that need to be very robust to digest all of the vegetable matter they eat. Because we cook our food, humans are able to eat quickly and then move on to all kinds of other activities. Fire also gave us protection from animals. If you've ever spent nights alone in the wilderness, you understand how important that is. Fire gives us heat to keep us warm and safe in all times of the year over every region of the planet. Consider that. Fire opened the entire planet to human habitation. Most importantly, fire pulls us together. Humans gather around fires, the hearth, the communal campfire. These are central to human relationships and communities going back throughout our history. When we think of the origin of fire, we often think of an individual picking up a burning stick or rubbing sticks together to create friction and blowing on embers to light a fire. But human beings used and maintained fires in groups. The carrying of fire, the maintaining of the hearth, the cooking of food, the gathering together to eat and share hospitality around the hearth, the community gathering around the campfire to tell stories, to counsel together, to solve problems. All of these were done in groups by a variety of people within the community, both women and men. In Greek mythology, Hestia is one of the 12 high Olympians. The goddess's core domain was keeping the hearth fire. As humans developed the mastery of fire technology, it led to increases in skull and brain size. How did this happen? Well, because we didn't have to dedicate so much energy to digesting food, our bodies were able to transfer more and more energy to powering our immensely complicated brains. Did you know that your brain consumes about 20% of your daily calories? Fire enabled that. The process of the growth of human brains is observable in human evolution. In addition, humans developed decreased teeth sizes compared to other early hominins. We also moved from trees to the ground to sleep. Women cooked food for their mate and their offspring, and mated males cooperated to punish anyone who stole their mate's food or molested their mates. There is a growing scientific consensus that Homo sapiens self-domesticated through cooperative socialization to eliminate uncontrolled reactive violence. In order to eliminate uncontrolled random violence and to work cooperatively to oust autocratic bullies and wild violent men, humans used proactive planned violence, planned through language, in order to eliminate those who were overly aggressive and unnecessarily or uncontrollably violent. We can compare domestication effects in humans with other domesticated animals. Domestication shows reduced aggression and much more tolerance of other animals, their own species and humans. This is survival of the friendliest. Most often we hear of the development of species in terms of survival of the fittest. But when we think of humans and other domesticated animals, it is perhaps more apt to think of the survival of the friendliest, or the survival of those who are most capable of socializing, cooperating, and competing while controlling the use of violence. Among domesticated creatures, including humans, we see larger eyes, smaller teeth, rounder, flatter faces, and slender bones. Scientifically, this is called neoteny, or maintaining adolescent features. We observe this when we see the differences between cats and dogs and lions and wolves. The next crucial development contributing to human consciousness is the development of language. Language is the sign and substance of consciousness. We don't know precisely how language developed, but we know that language is universal among humans, and there is profound linguistic diversity. In my estimation, language evolved along with a variety of other communication patterns: gestures, hoots, grunts, signs, dancing, motion, songs, music, chanting in unison, sharing memory around the fire, as well as in cooperative labor. Over time, vocalization, calls, warnings, and proto-musical communications developed into words and language in ever-increasing complexity. There is a symbiotic relationship between language and cognition or consciousness. There are relatively few things we can conceive of without words. There are some very basic things that words are really only a sign for, such as color or taste. Blue. What does the word blue have to do with the image of blueness? What does the word salt have to do with the taste of saltiness? Try to explain what those words mean without using them. But these are fundamental, sense-oriented words. For almost anything complex that we conceive of and think of, it is very difficult to do without words or language. And so the growth and development of language is symbiotic. It developed alongside the expansion of human cognition. This development both paralleled and fostered the development of increasingly complex relationships, cooperation, and communities. Language provides the signs and symbols for developing increasingly complex and abstract ideas. Next, I'd like to explore the differences and relationships between feminine and masculine forms of communication. Historically, feminine and masculine have differing modes of communication. The feminine aspect of communications emphasizes the relational. Feminine communication patterns were very likely of primary importance to language and consciousness development. There are reasons why women speak so much more and in greater subtlety and complexity than men. A key aspect of this is the need for women to use language to cooperate and empower themselves in the face of the greater physical strength of men and the male temptation to resort to violence. Language strongly facilitates female to female cooperation. Historically, women have cooperated to perform a wide range of labor together. For example, the spinning, warping, and weaving of cloth has often been greatly facilitated and improved through cooperation between women in communities. Language facilitated that cooperation. Feminine language patterns relate to attracting and choosing mates. Females select mates. Men are less selective. Language contributes to females convincing mates to maintain long-term relationships and to help raise and maintain their children. Feminine language patterns focus on relationships, understanding and communicating emotions, on subtle relational connections, and the kinds of behaviors, activities, and feelings that reflect the health, durability, stability, and volatility of relationships. Feminine language contributes to networking and community building and to mutual protection. Careful use and manipulation of thoughts, ideas, communications, symbols, emotions, all of these characterize feminine communication patterns. Masculine communication patterns tend to be more instrumental. As noted before, men are often tempted to revert to physical dominance. Complex and subtle communications by both females and males enabled humans to oppose and control unfettered violence. Masculine linguistic patterns focus on communicating about instrumental goals, organizing cooperative hunting, developing and using tools, weapons, and other technologies. Masculine communication can emphasize the importance of observing and copying actions with relatively few words. Hey, check this out. Men have their own ways of communicating about cooperation and competition, leadership, and planning. Male communications have historically been important to planning and organizing protection, conflict, and violence. By contrast, in a variety of societies, female communicators were often elevated for the roles of diplomacy and peacemaking. Masculine communication patterns also addressed capturing resources and people, attracting mates, and training young men. I am well aware that speaking of feminine and masculine communication patterns and trying to draw generalizations will lead some people to bring up a variety of objections that are likely fair. This is because all generalizations break down. Nevertheless, there is evidence that feminine and masculine communication patterns differ, and they differed much more in the past than they differ now. Please also recognize that I bring these issues up in part to emphasize the crucial contributions made by women to the development of human language and complex human cognition, relationship building, community development, and establishing peace and security for human societies. It is in intimate relationships, in families and communities, that the feminine and masculine linguistic patterns intersect and blend. Individuals, relationships, networks, and communities express both feminine and masculine aspects of communications to differing degrees. So obviously, language reflects the totality of communications, but no individual participates in the totality of language. We select those things that are most useful to us, that are most relevant to us. There was extraordinary linguistic diversity among pre-modern communities and societies. Today, there are many languages, but in the distant past, 400 or 500 years ago, certainly 2,000 years ago, there were many, many more languages. Therefore, there's great variety in human communication. Another very important aspect of the development of human consciousness, which is closely related to language, is time or temporality. Time is wired into almost all language. We have verb tenses and various other linguistic cues to note present, past, and future with great subtlety. Time is a conceptual frame for understanding and ordering motion, especially for cooperatively doing so. It is a way of ordering the past, memory, learning, education, as well as meaning. It is also how we organize the future, planning goals, cooperation, and purpose. Early human communities and societies developed norms, cultures, and ideals. Social order, mores, and acculturation are the ways we teach and pass on our ways of living. Over time, human societies developed law. They developed ways of controlling and focusing violence for the use of each community or society. Societies developed tools for maintaining order, establishing and maintaining peace and security. Societies also developed memory, genealogy, myth, history, and ways of identifying who we are and who the people outside of our group are. We also developed the beginnings of religion. The earliest human beliefs were generally about spirits and gods in nature, totems, spiritual representations of natural things. We often call these religious practices animism or shamanism. Societies also developed rituals in order to reproduce the divine world in the human order. Ritualized forms of action and ritualized stories and meaningful myths communicated or encapsulated the divine or ideal way of life and the way culture should be organized. This is the way that things are organized among the gods, and we then try to embody that structure and those ideas here on earth in our mundane spaces among our relationships and communities. Out of this stems religion and philosophy. Religion and philosophy form the backbone of ancient wisdom traditions that continue to shape many societies. The evolution of these religious traditions shapes human consciousness to a profound degree. We will take opportunities to discuss the development of cultural and religious traditions in much greater detail in later episodes. Let's turn back and speak more specifically about the kinds of technologies that contributed to the development of human consciousness. We've already spoken about fire, the first human technology. The second very important human adaptation is the human ability to throw. Throwing stones to develop slings and spears was very powerful. Understanding, intuiting distance, aim, motion, the arc of a thrown object, and striking a target contributed significantly to the development of the human mind. Additionally, humans are not as fast as most other creatures, though we are excellent long-distance runners. But we don't have particularly sharp teeth, we don't have claws. And so humans developed the ability to throw stones and sharp objects and projectiles in order to catch and kill prey. Next, tools. Humans use a wide variety of tools and have done so for many thousands of years. Our earliest tools came from wood, animal bones, and horns. Even though we focus on stone tools, don't underestimate the importance of wood and bone tools. Stone tools have generally been made through flint knapping. There are a variety of stones with crystalline structures and high silica content, such as flint, obsidian, quartzite, jasper, etc., that are useful for this. And our ancestors, all of our ancestors, no matter where you are in the world, mastered these techniques. They learned which stones could be used, and they learned how to strike flint or obsidian at certain angles, knocking off flakes and producing hand axes, scrapers, and eventually fine cutting tools. These were useful for cutting trees, for cleaning animal skins, for cutting strips of leather, for rope, and early sewing. By the Neolithic period or New Stone Age, humans were producing spearheads, arrowheads, and a wide variety of fine cutting tools. Humans developed other tools as well. We used clay to produce pottery. Then once they learned to fire the clay, they could produce durable cookware, bowls, containers, and building materials like tiles. Archaeologists devote a great deal of their time to digging up broken pieces of pots or pot shards. Human cultures in the past did not alter or change as rapidly as our culture does now. In the ancient past, human societies and communities tended to make the same kinds of pots, bowls, and storage containers of pottery through generations. Those different kinds of pots, their different shapes, colors, different ways of making them, how they may have colored or painted them, all of these aspects reflect the different cultures and communities that made them. And archaeologists are able to study these cultural artifacts, date them, and identify which cultural groups were occupying a given location or region at a given time from their broken pots. Eventually, humans developed wheels and finally metal tools. We'll discuss metal tools and weapons in another episode because they come quite late in our story of the development of human societies and consciousness. But in a future episode, I'm really looking forward to sharing with you about how iron technology and the Iron Age transformed human societies, cultures, and religions. The next technology in our story of human development is the string revolution. This one's very close to my heart because I studied textile industry as a historian. Cloth is so important and interesting. It's a basic human need: food, clothing, and shelter. The string revolution occurred many thousands of years ago when our ancestors learned to take long fibers of animal hair or plant fibers, rub them together, twist them, and spin them into thread. Then they combined the threads into other complex tools like rope or cloth. The string revolution gave rise to sewing, threading together animal skins, binding shelters together, sewing all kinds of containers for storing and transporting things, making bowstrings for archery, and eventually weaving cloth. The next profound set of adaptations comes from domestication of plants and animals. We've already discussed the process of human self-domestication. Many generations later, humans began to domesticate dogs, then a variety of grasses and fruits to produce wheat, rice, barley, apples, etc. And finally, the domestication of cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, horses, and eventually camels. These technological and breeding advances contributed to the development of entirely new ways of living for human communities. Humans were able to begin horticulture and then sedentary agriculture. Others developed pastoral herding of a wide range of animals. From sedentary agricultural communities eventually developed economic specialization of many kinds: towns, cities, states, armies, and eventually empires. It is important to remember that all of these technologies and adaptations, from stone and wood and bone, to thread, to pots, to domestication and agriculture, were developed, passed on, and elaborated through relational bonds and knowledge. All technology and all ideas are developed in relation between people as one individual or group adds on and passes their innovations to the next generation or group. Through teaching, training, cooperation, and competition, communities and societies maintained, developed, and spread ideas, cultural practices, and technologies. In the modern West, we love to believe that ideas have inventors like Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. But we have no idea who was the first to domesticate wheat or grind and bake bread. But those women and men and the communities and cultures that fostered the development of their ideas and practices passed them from generation to generation, and they are no less important to our lives and cultures. All of these dimensions grew organically together to create greater volume and greater complexity of human population groups. The complexity of communities and ideas and human consciousness multiplied exponentially with each new technological dimension and with each increase in numbers of humans in communities and societies. All of these principles weave together to give us a view of human nature, from fundamental human relationships to fire, to language, to technology, to the growth of ideas and culture. Human nature is cooperative. It is relational. It is loving. Human nature is also competitive, hierarchical, violent, and coercive. Human beings in relationships and communities are always striving to order and to maintain a balance between cooperative relations, competition, hierarchy, and coercion. Now, let's turn our attention to a pair of ancient creation myths that give us different perspectives on these principles and aspects of the rise and development of human consciousness. I use the term myth to mean stories with symbolic, deep meanings. People often use the term myth to imply something that's not true. That's not a very useful definition. Far from it. Myths are often more true than facts, because they get at the deeper symbolic meanings that explain how humans understand their worlds and their relationships. Let's begin with the Genesis creation story. In Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth through the processes of speaking and division. Let there be light, and so forth. And by dividing the lights, the waters, etc., in order to organize the sun, moon, and stars, the land, the plants, fish, and animals of the earth. Then God created Adam, meaning man, or red earth man. Next, God created Eve, or Chava, meaning living one, or source of life. They lived a peaceful vegetarian existence in the Garden of Eden. Adam used language. He named all of the things in the garden. God commanded them to tend the garden, to multiply and fill the earth, and to eat from the fruit of the garden, except the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They were tempted by the serpent, usually interpreted as a satanic figure. Eve and then Adam ate the fruit, so that, quote, their eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And so, desiring to be wise, they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Then they saw that they were naked, and wove their first clothing. God confronted them, and after passing the buck, they admitted their actions. Most Christians view this event, the fall, as a great disaster or calamity. Some Christians interpret it as a purposeful event that gave rise to human agency or ability to choose because they knew good and evil. They became responsible for their actions and therefore capable of sin and evil. God told Eve that she would bear children in sorrow and be ruled by her husband. God told Adam that he would work to grow crops, that the soil would no longer spontaneously give them food, but that he would need to work daily. And eventually they would both die and return to the earth. At that time, God performed the first sacrifice. God killed an animal to provide them with animal skin clothing. Then they left the Garden of Eden. Next, Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore children. I don't think knowing here is just a euphemism to refer to intimacy. The relations between a husband and wife is knowledge. Intimacy is not just a sexual act. Intimacy is fundamentally about relational knowledge, trust, shared goals, cooperative work, and shared closeness. This knowledge is a complete form of union. Then Adam and Eve emulated the sacrificial tradition and taught their sons, Cain, Abel, and Seth, to sacrifice to God as well. I am fascinated that the oldest text in the Hebrew and Western civilization and tradition centers on various key topics we've already discussed, particularly the bond between man and woman, the rise of consciousness and human agency, the development of language, the importance of relational knowledge and sexuality, and the rise of sacrifice, worship, fire offerings in orienting humans to their highest ideals. Now let's consider another ancient philosophical tradition from Hinduism. This is the Sankhya creation myth. Sankhya is an ancient meditative philosophical tradition whose goal is to understand the relationships between the human spirit or soul and the eternal spiritual nature of the universe, or Purusha as they call it. This tradition is parallel to the Vedanta philosophical tradition, but philosophically distinct from it. This Sankhya philosophical creation tradition clearly makes reference to the ancient Vedic Purusha creation myth, wherein the original cosmic man, Purusha, was sacrificed and divided to produce the physical world and its key constituents. But the Sankhya creation philosophy has a fascinating set of philosophical stages for the development or evolution of the physical world from the highest spiritual reality in multiple steps. These are the stages. First, in the beginning, the universe was unified, stable, and eternal. This state is called Purusha. For those familiar with Vedanta, this state of spiritual eternal reality would be similar to Brahman. From this evolved the three gunas, or the three fundamental qualities or aspects of Prakriti. Prakriti means nature, or the physical universe. When the gunas stopped being in perfect balance and began to move in dynamic interaction with one another, which they do constantly in the physical universe. From this dynamic interaction grew buddhi, or intellect. From buddhi developed ahamkara, literally the I maker, or self-awareness. And then from intellect and awareness developed manas, or mind. Isn't that interesting? First we have spirit, eternal and unchanging. From that we have the birth of the original constituents of the physical universe that began to move and then produced intellect, self-awareness, and mind. These are principles of consciousness and awareness, as yet not embodied in creatures. Next, from the aspects of consciousness, the five senses developed: seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. From the five senses came the five sense objects: forms, sound, textures, flavors, odors. Next, the sense organs developed: eyes for seeing forms, ears for hearing sounds, skin for touching and feeling textures, tongue for tasting flavors, nose for smelling odors. From these developed the five active organs of the body: hands, feet, speech from the mouth, elimination from the anus, and procreation from the gonads. Finally, from these sensory constituents, the five elements of physical matter developed: earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and from that, the entire universe. Obviously, all of these concepts and Sanskrit terms will be unfamiliar to most people, but the core principles are: the universe was originally stable, balanced, eternal, unified, and fundamentally spiritual. When the universe began to move, it fell from stasis or balance or eternal spirit to develop, first, intellect, awareness, mind, and mental responses, then the sensations, then the active organs of sensation and action, then the physical world. In the Sankhya tradition, the goal of life is to philosophically comprehend this process of evolution from the spiritual and eternal to consciousness to physical existence, and then to journey in reverse through meditation and philosophy and virtuous actions in order to escape the physical, comprehend the true nature of consciousness, and return to the eternal spiritual reality. I'm not trying to convince you to incorporate this into your belief system. I'm sharing something that I find fascinating. Many centuries ago, Hindu philosophers developed a creation myth on top of a much older cosmic sacrifice creation myth. And the core principles of this creation was the evolution of consciousness, human body, nature, and all of the physical universe out of eternal spiritual reality. In conclusion, human consciousness developed over thousands of generations as women and men chose one another, as families made long-term marriage bonds and built communities. Our awareness and consciousness is built on the foundation of relational and community bonds and shared knowledge. Our consciousness was born of fire, the first human tool. Around hearth fires and communal campfires, our ancestors shared meals and stories, and the fires transformed our bodies and our minds. Our consciousness was born of language creation, from gestures and signs to words and songs and stories, told and retold, generation after generation. Feminine and masculine communication patterns all combined through intimate knowledge and family caregiving and the training of youth to produce extraordinary, complex, and diverse languages around the world. Our consciousness was born of technology, of wood and bone, of stone tools, of pots and bowls, and thread, tying our clothing, our shelters, and our tools together. Our consciousness arose through domestication, first self-domestication of human beings, or the taming of wild men into friendly, communicative, cooperative, competitive families, clans, communities, and societies. Then the domestication of dogs, and eventually the domestication of fruits and grasses into wheat, rice, corn, and apples. Finally, the domestication of cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, and horses. And all of this combined in ever-increasing complexity of relationships, communities, and societies, until we had states and cities and religions. Our consciousness arose from our greatest stories and ideals, particularly our ancient wisdom traditions. These principles can be found in many aspects of our cultures and societies from around the world. We explored two ancient creation stories, the first from Genesis, the second from Hindu Sankhya philosophy. We considered the creation of nature and human beings, the importance of male and female relational bonds, the rise of awareness and agency, and different pathways or ideals that shape our sense of human nature and the purpose of life. If you find this meaningful, we encourage you to connect with your friends and family and share. Share some of the ideas that are meaningful to you. And please, join our community. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and participate. You are very welcome here. Amen, amen. This is the way of being humans together.